to the Fantasy Pavilion, your home for fantasy sports.
Welcome, guys. Welcome back to the Fantasy Pavilion, your home for fantasy sport. And of course, it's Thursday. Another weekend of F1 approaches, and we are here to break down and try our best to help you with your fantasy picks and, of course, discuss the circuit. And I'm joined by some esteemed guests. Of course, first up, we have Rob from the F1 Fantasy Hub. How are you going, bro?
Jared, I'm well, mate. How are you today?
Fine, thanks. I'm fine, thanks. Nice, thanks for popping through. And, of course, Mike, the Mercedes fraud. How are you going, Mike?
Good evening, guys. Good evening.
Hey, man.
But before we go any further, just want to, of course, send our respects and condolences to, of course, the entire family, of course, to the Queen and, of course, everyone in England and all those affected as well in the Commonwealth. She did have a nice long run. Not much people can say that. And yeah, so we wish them all the best during this time. We know a lot of British-related sports were cancelled this weekend, so but of course, Italy is still on, Monza is still on. But before we go further, we have to let's touch a little bit on the Dutch GP. It was good. I was afraid, Rob, that it was going to be a boring one, but it was good because it was not something. It's not a track that's a lot of overtaking kind of curve, but it was good.
Yeah, I thought it was a great race. I was a bit worried, halfway through. It looked like Max was going to run away with it at some point, but then the Mercedes were pushing back through the field. It looked like Russell and Hamilton were both going to give it a serious nudge. And then that safety car at the end really turned the tides for a few of the drivers out there. I didn't expect to see Russell come through to the second place. I think as soon as Max is on fresh tyres at the end, you can't really expect he's going to get beaten by anyone. But great result for Russell. Sainz and Perez, fighting it out for fifth, sixth. Lewis end up in fourth, and Leclerc back on the podium for the first time in a little while too.
Long time. Correct. Yeah. Mike, we were there watching it live. What was your thoughts of the Dutch GP?
Great race. It was balanced. It was very entertaining. I think it had a lot of elements from Abu Dhabi. As after I think back on it, a lot of it had one that virtual safety car at a point in time. Then you had the full safety car. You had the whole Lewis starting on old tires and Max on fresh tires right behind him. It had that whole air of Abu Dhabi all over again, so to speak. So it was a really entertaining race. I think it was well managed. Mercedes did well this weekend, I think, given the package that they've had so far. So they're showing promise for the rest of the season, and I think it was generally a great race. Very entertaining and very enjoyable. Because I was screaming at it at the live stream on Sunday.
You were standing for at least the last 10 minutes of that race. You were standing.
Yeah, because it was intense.
No, it really was. It really was a good one.
I think Mercedes probably screwed Lewis a little bit, again. But in those positions, it's tough to make the right decision. Because if it is they had stopped him and changed his tires, he'd have lost track position. And he probably would never have caught back Max because at the end of the day, Max and Red Bull just have too much pace in their car for Mercedes right now. But so it was a difficult decision, but I think they should have stopped him. And I think even on fresh tires, Lewis could have probably hold off Charles. So we could have gotten that Mercedes 2-3 at least. But hindsight is 2020 vision. But it was a great race overall.
So, but it's looking a little grim though, guys, that Lewis might not keep his record of winning at least one race every
Nah, I don't believe
season.
that. It's a plenty more races for the season to go. He's taking a new engine from Monza, so you never know what that means. Because look, he did that for Brazil last year, and he stormed through the field. He man make 25 places up with a new engine. So you never know what this weekend holds, but I think Brazil will be another amazing race for him. So maybe he gets it there again.
All right, cool. Realistically, Rob, right? It's not looking too hard, Rob. Rob, the math's not maths, and Rob. Oh, what, five
I
more
mean, I
races?
think like Michael made a good point about Lewis making his way through the field, but Brazil last year he did that at the start of the sprint race at 20th, then he started on the grid for Sunday in 10th. So across two races, he's probably likely to do that, but I'd be surprised if I see him go from 20th to first this time around. He might make top 5 for sure. I think Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, you've seen guys do it already this year where, you know, they'll come back from 19th, 20th and finish in the top 5. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see, you know, Perez, Sainz and Hamilton all finish kind of around that mark on Sunday.
Solid. So, of course, we are here to discuss Monza, which is, again, I like to talk about
Temple
the
of
shape.
Speed.
Well, I was going to touch on that as well, but, I like to talk about the shape of the tracks. It was very ironic that Italy's circuit looks like a foot, and Italy itself on a map looks like a foot. So that's very 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 funny there, right? But I did a little research today, and as Michael just alluded to or just touched on there, this track is something. It's similar to the Belgium to Spa, right? There's a lot of downward force, a lot of speed. It's a fast track. And I think this race we might see a bit of some shakeups in the top 10, not necessarily the top 3 or 4, but we will see some shakeups. I can see maybe Albon and whatnot, barring any issues, dominating and coming out. But we'll touch on those kind of things a little later. Of course, so race weekend, as you guys know, always starts on the Friday. We have P1, 8 a.m. our time. My goodness, that's very, very early. And then we have P2 again, 11 a.m. On Saturday, we have 7 a.m. P3, and of course qualifying at 10 a.m. Race starts at 9 a.m. Sunday. We will be at Island Bay doing the live watch along as usual. So don't forget to tune in and check us out there. Let's take a quick look at the circuit. So the first ever Grand Prix run here was back in 1950. It's 53 laps, so it should be a nice quick race. Hopefully, no incidents, no safety cars. Hopefully, it's very smooth. The last fastest lap record was way back in 2004 by Rubens Barrichello. That's a good way back, right? So hopefully, we can get that broken this weekend. Michael, you want to run us through the track as quickly as possible? Let us know anything. That's all.
Yeah, so Monza is, as you said, the Temple of Speed. It is one of the most infamous tracks on the circuits. It is not necessarily an overtaking track, but it is a very, very fast track. So the first corner it comes down to is called the bus stop, and it is a beautiful corner. If it is anybody watched the race last year, you'll have that iconic image of Max parked up on top of Lewis coming out at turn 2, and then it's a long right hander, and it's a long straight into breaking left. I'm actually not watching it, I'm going off of memory because I'm driving. So let me just pull aside and stop before thing. But I think, guys, playing Gran Turismo helps because it helps you to memorize the track. So I know the track from memory because of Gran Turismo. So yeah, down the main street into turn 1, 2, bus stop. Then we take that long right, which is turn 3, into turn 4 and 5. It's a very tight corner. You might see somebody pelting it up the inside, but it's unlikely. But I think Charles did it here and squeeze Lewis. And it is we come right out of turn 5 into, it's a very tight, quick left right into 6 and a quick right into 7. And flat out all the way down to 8. 9 is a nice quick turn, you might see somebody following closely behind. And then sector 3, that long straight before turn 11. Turn 11, it's a very long corner, but you would see the cars going flat out from maybe probably a quarter way into the corner. Guys go flat out all the way down back to onto the main straight. You have two DRS detection zones, and the DRS detection zones are on the main straight, of course, and then between turn 7 and 8. So into turn 8, you might find somebody trying to have the inside after DRS, making a pass. But again, Monza is not really a track that has a lot of overtaking. But the nice thing this year is that these cars are following a lot closer. So behind those high-speed corners, yes, they're corners, but because they're so high-speed, and usually the cars go through those corners at, let's say, 75% throttle, very close to top speed. And because these cars are following so much better, it's quite likely we'll see a lot of high-speed following, which will be really, really entertaining and fun. So I think we're in for a treat on Sunday.
Now, because it's a fast track, a lot of tire degradation, what do you think the stop strategy will be? You think a 2-stopper, 3-stopper? What do you think?
I honestly think the best strategy for this weekend is something like either a 2-stopper with hards, or you go 3-stop. So you start off medium, something like medium, stop for hards, and hopefully that hold it to the end, or start on mediums, go hard, or go medium, and then go soft for the last couple of laps.
All right, solid. And I think the weather should hold up fine. I don't think I saw anything terrible.
Yeah, I didn't see anything concerning the weather, so we should be good in that regard.
Yeah.
But it will definitely be an exciting race, especially with these new cars.
Yeah, exactly. And especially with some of these cars are very, very fast. Now, I just want to look back at the race results last time around. Now, of course, this is not your typical race results.
This is not your typical race results. These are bogus, falsified, illegitimate results.
Right? Of course, we can't even see a certain duo. Right? We know maybe something happened to them. We don't know. Right? I can't recall.
A dotish fool who does not know how to drive. But that's as much as I will see.
Oh Lord! But I must say, we know, of course, Rick and Rob, we don't expect this to be repeated.
You never know. You never know.
Never know.
Tit for tat.
Never know.
If you want to play games, let me play. If your name man, come outside.
You never know. But as I said, I can see some variation in the top 10, Rob, as I was saying. I think because especially with some of the upgrades to some of the lower cars, I can see a lot of them. And I think, don't quote me, I think Sainz may start at the back of the grid. I think so, because I think he has a change that he did on my you heard anything, bro?
Yeah, no, he does. He's one of at least 5 confirmed drivers that are taking a Grand Prix this weekend. Perez, Hamilton, as we spoke about before, Sonoda, and even Bottas are all confirmed to at least take a penalty. To the extent of how many grid positions they take, I'm not sure on that yet. And then there was also talk that Schumacher as well is going to be starting at the back of the grid too. So that's 6 that I can count at the moment. There was talk of a 7th, but I haven't seen any word on that. I know Magnussen might be taking some parts. So much like 2 weeks ago, 5, 6, 7 different drivers are starting at the back, regardless of how they perform in qualifying. And looking at the history of the race earlier today, the winners have been a mixed bag for the last kind of 3 to 4 years or so. We had Ricciardo last year, Gasly the year before that, Charles Leclerc won the year before that, and then the proven performers in Hamilton, Vettel, Alonso have kind of littered the last 5 to 10 years before that. So it's anyone's game, but given the straight line speed, I think, and the penalties as well, you'll see some cars like Williams who have got quite a good straight line speed come into the thinking. If Albon, for example, can qualify well, he'll probably put himself in the mix for points. I still expect the top 3 teams will be, around about, the usual positions, but even Alpine's looked quite good recently. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alonso or Ocon finish within the top 5 or even better than that potentially.
I dare say, I think Alonso could make top 4. Dare say.
Yeah.
Dare say.
He's driven really well lately,
Yes.
and not just from a fantasy perspective, but we've seen him drive the lights out in Canada in that qualifying session where he was second. We've had a number of other top 5, 6 qualifying sessions from him in the last few races as well. So I really, really think that Alpine are at the moment the 4th best constructor in the grid, and I think they'll take that momentum into Italy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. As I said, I'm expecting a lot of mid-tier battles, and I'm expecting the top 10 to be shaken. And as I said, the top 4. I even want to shout out Ocon. Ocon has been quietly doing his thing very, very well. No, not much talk about him.
No,
yeah.
I mean he like Alonso probably has been in the top 10 most of the time, in the mix for a top 10 position most of the time. He's finished in the points the last 4 races.
Right.
I mean, his best result this season has still only been 5th. He had a 5th in Austria, but he's had quite a number of good qualifying sessions as well this season. So I think he had P5 in qualifying in Belgium and again in Hungary. So it's a race that he can obviously on the straights get ahead of with the faster cars behind him, try and get the lead early, so he he's in the mix at the end of the race.
What about before we touch the fantasy aspect, of course? Also, I was looking at the grid, looking at the different, because as I said, a lot like last weekend. I must say, to me, one of the drivers had the best weekend. I don't know if it's best weekend last weekend or one of the best weekends last weekend. I want to say Stroll. I think Stroll had a very solid weekend from qualifying even into the race. Now, normally we don't talk about Stroll, but Stroll
Courage.
looked good. Stroll looked real good. Maybe he could do something this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, P10 in qualifying, P10 in the race. He's kind of been teetering around that mark for the last half dozen races or so, between P13, P14, and P10. But then again, P10's been his best result so far this season. So I think I just don't know what the Aston Martin's going to look like on the straights. Although I did hear earlier that their rear wing is what was described as a piece of paper. So they're trying to look for as much aerodynamic power through those straights as possible, right, I would think. And I think he's been consistent all year. I mean, when you look at a driver like him who's finishing between P15 and P12, P11 most races, and he's not in the points, you worry. But I mean, he's put himself in positions to get close to the points, and when he has, he's come away with a couple here and there. So again, like Ocon and Alonso and the other aforementioned drivers, I think he's another one to keep an eye on, as you say.
What about my boy, the guy that I turbo drive now? I am. It was looking good, right? It was a good show. I was like, yeah. And when I saw him on the weekend, especially for the P3, and then in qualifying, I was like, well, yes, I made a really good decision. It's going to happen. He's going to finish in the top 10. And he was going good. And then this car failure. What do you think? What do you think? You think he could bounce back? This weekend might be tricky, though. I think it'll be really tricky this weekend.
Yeah, I think Tsunoda's been very unlucky this year. And I was very impressed by some of those times he was putting through in practice and in qualifying. To put himself, up into Q3 and had that P3 result earlier on as well. I think it's only a matter of time until Tsunoda turns in a performance that we know he's capable of. I guess unfortunately, he just, with the reliabilities he's had, and he's had a couple of crashes as well. I don't know what, he's just a mixed bag. I mean, a good omen for him is that his best result was in Imola in the fourth race of the season. I think, where did he come? He came in 7th, which I think was his third or fourth points finish of the season. So back to another Italian track. I'm not saying the AlphaTauri are going to be powerful on the straights, but maybe that's a bit of good luck or a good omen for him heading into this one.
A good sign. I'm hoping so, but I'm not gonna turbo drive him again. But I'll keep him.
It was bold. I'll give you that. And
Yeah, but it almost worked, but almost means nothing, you know. But it almost paid off. But I was proud of him. You know, forget fantasy. I was really proud of him. He had as I said, him, Stroll, Alonso, some really good weekends. A really good weekend last weekend.
Yeah, look, I think this is another weekend to take a punt on a differential option. If you're not TDing it, and I don't know if there are going to be too many daring like you to do that, but it's another weekend just like Belgium 2 weeks ago where we've got 5, 6, 7 people starting at the back to kick the day off. So if you're looking to take a punt for a differential on a Gasly or he had a great result there 2 years ago, even a Ricciardo, I'm not saying they're excellent assets from a fantasy perspective, but this is probably a great weekend to give it a shot if you want to mix things up a little bit from the template.
I agree. Now, do you have your model at hand by chance to share, or do you want me to bring it up on Twitter? You have it at hand?
Yep, I can.
All right. So before we dive in, we'll do that first.
Okay.
And you will explain it very slow for me, at least, right? Maths is not my fault.
No, that's all right. Let me know if you can see it. It should be okay.
So, right. Tell us what this is. Tell us how it came about, how long it took you to plan it, everything. Let's go.
Yeah, I'll give you a background for anyone who's interested, and I'll reshare this stream tomorrow, so anyone who wants to learn more about it can. By background, I'm actually a financial consultant, so I spend a bit of time working in spreadsheets, and so I guess had a bit of time a couple of months ago. Thought it'd be nice to at least have some logic and methodology behind my decisions each week, because I feel like you can just get trapped into sometimes just choosing the driver who had the best weekend the previous weekend, and because of how unreliable fantasy can be with those DNFs, you just feel like you're taking a punt some of the time. So I built this for myself. I've been sharing it on my Twitter page for those people who have paid attention to some of my ramblings, and I'll just walk you guys through the underlying kind of data that sits within it, so at least I can give you guys some context as to how I built it. So this is kind of the first part to the equation. It's just the weekly results since the start of the season, so the scores that each driver obviously puts in from a fantasy perspective. We've got on the left here their price, if they're on a streak. A lot of this is, at least for this part of the workbooks, all manual, so everything in red is a manual calculation. So for this week, I've dropped in their streaks. We've got their points from the previous weeks rolling up here, and then a calculation of their value, their points per million. So their price, their points per week on average divided by how much they cost. So I guess the ones in red in this column you can see are probably the less value for money picks, such as Joe, Latifi, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, and then you've got your better picks that are Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, the ones that have consistently delivered each week. Same again for the constructors down the bottom, and then I've got the prices here, which I'll also manually input. I added this in last week, which is just the placings, so I can see what the average position each driver qualifies in qualifying, and then how they finish on Sunday as well. So that's kind of the basis for where the numbers pull from that I'm kind of crunching each week. And then we go in here. This is a bit more unpredictable in a sense that we just don't know how the drivers will go each week. But this sheet shows where you might expect the driver to qualify and finish on the race. And then we have their classification, so whether they come in Q1, Q2, or Q3, whether they beat their teammates, and then points in fantasy for the top 10 for qualifying, and again, the top 10 for the race. So that's kind of how this part of the model works. And then I have the points in column U for how the points all sum together, and then streak points, and then the total in W here. So when I'm I guess estimating results each week, what I'm trying to project results each week for the race, it's hard to factor in who's going to finish, right? Because each week we'll have 2 or 3 DNS.
Right.
We don't know who that's going to be. So I just assume everyone finishes the race because I know these are only estimates, and let's give me a number that at least pushes me towards what I think the final score for the team will be. So I've just ordered these for argument's sake, 1 to 20 in qualifying and race for these 20 drivers here. But for example, let's say if Hamilton qualified in 10th and Stroll qualified in 5th, you'd see that Lewis's qualifying points would go down as a result, but then he's making up his 10 points for positions gained, and Stroll is obviously losing those for going back 5 positions on race day. So it's meant to be dynamic, so I can do some scenario analysis on what I think will happen. But usually, to keep it simple, I just go there, assume first and second, third, so on and so forth down the list, and I'll just change the order of the drivers. So doesn't take into account grid penalties, doesn't take into account DNS, just because of how unpredictable it can be each week. Of course. I've got a sprint section here, but I usually just keep that blank if it's not a sprint weekend. So that's how I predict the points for all of the constructors. These are just based off the scoring metrics on the fantasy website. So again, all based on how the drivers perform, and it runs off that. And then this is something that's been quite popular on Twitter for a few people. And again, also very projective focused. So, I'll punch in, the team build that, say, for example, you might ask for, and you say, okay, I want these 5 drivers in Red Bull as my constructor. Based on the predictions we have in this tab with the qualifying and race positions, it will then calculate what they're expected to score that week, plus any streaks. And then if they're turbo drive, as in Charles would be for this weekend, for example, it'll just double his points and the streak. So if say, for example, you wanted to TD Perez instead, it would double his streak points, assuming he qualifies and finishes in P10 in the top 10. 2 times 37 is 74. So that would pretty much be his score and the team score along the bottom here. And then you can also see team values. So it's kind of capturing all of the main points of the fantasy aspect, but I'm still working on a few different components of the model to make it a bit more dynamic.
No, well, I have to commend it because, again, F1 is so unpredictable. It's not to say like football. I mean, yes, players could get injured or red carded, sure. But F1 is your drive, as you said, is not something that could go based on the previous weeks. Just because Max would have, I just saying one of the last 10 races, I just saying 10 races and coming into this one, they say, right, he bound to win this one. You never know what could happen to him or Lewis or anybody who, it could have look at Russell. Russell was on a great streak, only driver to ever finish in the top 5, and then bam, DNF in one of the races, and it wasn't even because of his fault, right? It was something silly. So, but yeah, this was, and it was pretty. And I'll follow you, because I'm not good at these things at all. I have a lot of friends who do it for football, and I'm always lost. But I follow you. Makes sense.
Look,
because
I try to keep it as simple as possible for me because I'm no wizard when it comes to predictive outcomes and other kind of functions or technology that exists out there. So as long as I can keep it simple for me to understand and it provides an output for whoever needs the information as well, then that's as much as I can do. I don't really think like in F1 there is really much of a tool out there at the moment that exists for kind of predicting scores. I've come across a couple of different things, but comparing it to FPL where there's just so much more information, so many resources out there with your expected goals and assists and involvement and all that. Just having something that I can rely on, and for people who want to at least have the benefit of this information to provide to them, is a huge plus for me and for everyone else. So just trying to be as helpful as possible.
Yeah, well, I will grab this and put it up on Twitter, and I'll direct them to your team. All right.
Look, I mean,
No.
I would love to share it at some point. I just
Yeah.
don't.
No, it's just good to look at for the while to know if something exists. Let's let them know that, and
Yeah,
you'll have it ready and rolling for next season for sure. But
yeah,
it is no, it's good, it's good. But some people, you never know, people might come to you and say, well, hey, I'm looking at Latifi, but I want to turbodrive him. People might
definitely.
come to you and ask you how to, how Latifi's looking at it.
Yeah, exactly. So I know there's a few other diehard F1 fantasy players out there that have very similar tools they rely on each week. But
Right.
I think given it's still in its infancy, F1 fantasy, there's not really much out there at the moment that encourages the wider playing base to utilize that to at their disposal. So, maybe next season if I can get something live and more robust going, it can be shared publicly.
Yeah, of course, of course. No, but I like this. Thanks for showing us this. All right, so
No worries.
let's get straight into
Yeah, just now before you move on, like Rob, that's honestly really really cool as a comp-sci student who would have done work in Excel. I think this is really really impressive, and I fully understood it, so that is really cool, bro.
I'm glad. Like I said, trying to keep it as straightforward and as easy to understand as possible. So glad you guys.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I feel like it adds some science to fantasy as opposed to just quote unquote willy nilly picking.
Yeah, exactly.
Because yeah, some logical thinkers would appreciate something like this. So this is really cool, bro.
Oh, glad. Appreciate it, mate. All right, Jared. Is this we're taking a look at your teams now?
Yes, of course. So last week, the Dutch GP, not too hot, Rob, not too hot, right? As you can see, a beautiful -18 there on Bottas. I tried something, and a beautiful -6 on Sonoda. I'm still proud of that punt, Rob. I'm still very proud of that punt. Because it was a punt, but as I said, it was paying off well up until Sunday, up until the reliability issue. But Team One, Baron Bottas was not too terrible. Of course, I had Max, Schumacher, Hamilton, Alonso, and Alpine as my constructor. Can't go wrong with that. Because again, Alonso and Ocon are tearing it up, doing really well. Team 2, nothing red except for the turbo drive tab, so that's good. That's a sweet relief there. Of course, I had Alonso. So I had double Alpine, Alonso, Ocon. Still have Gasly. Brought in Stroll, right? Stroll was one of my transfer. I think it was the only transfer I made that week for this team actually. Just brought. I can't remember who I had, but I brought in Stroll just for this weekend. I just had a vibe because again of how the track was built, and when I just tell myself, all right, Stroll might do something, and I thought it would have rained, so that's why I brought in Stroll. Norris, of course, there, and Red Bull as the constructor. For now, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, yes, Red Bull is very expensive, but you can't go wrong with a Red Bull constructor. And of course, Team 3, I had Leclerc, Sainz, double up on the Ferrari, Perez, Russell, big up Russell all the time, Sonoda. And of course, Haas is my constructor. There was a point, guys, that Haas was on minus points. So I'm glad for the 5. I'm grateful. Very grateful.
Yeah, a bit unlucky on Bottas as well.
Yeah.
Can't do much about that. I mean, he had a great start to the year, and
Exactly.
it just seems like the Alpha has fallen away. I think did he DNF in Belgium as well? I think he might have. Or
Yeah, Belgium, Spa.
sorry, yeah, in Spa, yeah. So, he had a great start, and he's just, or at least the car has just fallen off the rails a little bit in the last few races.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to a bit of like at the start, all the Ferrari powered cars were quick and it was impressive. But then it is where you see the budgets come into play. Ferrari was able to bring updates and stuff. Alpha fell behind, and well, as we know, did basically no updates whatsoever. So I guess that shows where budgets come in. But agreed, the Alpha started off strong because even Joe was making up some places and he was really impressive. But I think as everybody started to dial in their cars, things went quote unquote back to normal. Um, but yeah, I agree. But as he was there and then he just dropped off.
Yeah. But as you said, he really, really started off well. And everybody was saying, well, okay, cool. He's not at Mercedes anymore. He shook it off because that's a tough thing mentally, starting with a new team, new season so quick. and he was doing well, but all of a sudden, just yeah, boy, just fell off, fell off, fell off. So I definitely have to get rid of him. I'll definitely be making some changes there. What are your transfer plans this weekend, Michael? Anything at all? Is it turbo driver? Who are you looking at? How your team's looking?
Actually, the
You know,
alternative
you
to
know, fam.
Bottas is Alonso.
Well, I have
A little
Alonso
bit more
already.
expensive, but I'll okay.
Yeah, I have Alonso
But
already. I have Alonso already.
well, I mean, you could always go Ocon, your boy.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But what could always go differential bringing Latifi. I think Latifi will reach Q2 this weekend. Rob, what do you think?
Latifi, yeah,
Q2. I think in Q2, a Bullfizz is in Q3 and all.
yeah.
Because of how fast the track is, and I realize on the fast tracks, he does okay. Even Albon, I might even put a punt for Albon and all because of how fast the track is, and that downward force on their particular vehicles might help them. Might.
I mean, has he qualified in Q2 at all this season? I don't think he has. So there's the Williams, as I said before, it's got some great straight line speed. I just he might. I'm not ruling it out, but he's given us nothing to suggest he's
True.
going to put forward a great race or a great qualifying. So this weekend, so I mean, it would be great to see him, in the top 15, but I'm just not sure at the moment. Let's see how he looks in practice first.
Yes, yes, yes. But what I do, no, I'm an eye test guy in FPL, right? I don't really do the stats thing. Now, technically, everything is a stat, right? So I don't really believe in that divide, right? There's no divide. But I just not
Yeah.
into those things, right? I'm an eye test guy. So what I try to do, which is very risky, I literally wait till the last uh, practice session and I listen to all the commentary. Especially, forgive me, I don't name the guy, but the guy with the breakthrough, I love to hear him. Um, because he over breaks down stuff, right? I really like it. So I listen to him. So I literally wait for FP3 to make most of my transfers. Sometimes, and it does help sometimes. Sometimes I don't get to do it in time because I'm working, obviously, or like, because of the times that the practice sessions are. But that's what I normally do, and it did help me out. Which not the one just for Spa. Before the big break, actually, most of those races I did well because I will pull in some of the guys, especially Alonso. That's why Alonso's on most of my teams now. Because I was like, you know what, Frig, I don't like to do it, but it's only so much you can have a team without and the other guys overlapping on the other team. So Alonso, that's why I went hard on Alonso. I even had Vettel at one point, and he did finish top 10. So
Mhm.
that's my strategy. But of course, it is a rough, but I like to watch them on Friday as well. So it gives a, because I didn't believe in practice before. I never did. But practice is very good. Now, because it gives you an idea of the speed of the cars and how they're maneuvering on the track as well. I think McLaren is a good shout for this race.
McLaren's what? Sorry.
McLaren, I think McLaren is a good shout for this race.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
think so.
Lando drove really well here last year. I think with Carlos and Perez at the back, he'll have a chance to make up some ground at the front without having those faster cars in front of him. So, he had that podium earlier in the season, didn't he? I don't
Yeah.
I don't think he's had one since.
Since,
So
yeah.
I just think if there's a time for him to demonstrate what he's capable of, and it's probably this race. He's got three of the six fastest cars at the back. So I think he's a great shout if you want to move out one of Perez or Sainz for Norris.
I'm watching him, I'm watching him. But yeah, I think, as I said, and you know why I'm talking about McLaren, not no wildness, is because street. They are not too hot when there's a lot of curves and stuff on the track. They're not really good at that, and their reliability, their brakes always a problem. But as I say, recently they've been doing okay. And as you rightfully said, because of all the great penalties to some of the big boys. But let's not forget, Perez has a great recovery.
He
Sainz
does.
has great recovery. They're very good at coming back. So let's see, hopefully.
Yeah.
And again, these cars, the Mercedes and the Ferrari have to be the top two fastest cars in the grid right now.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. No, like we saw with Lewis, as much as you're defending and you're protecting a position, you can't when those guys come at you. And it's very, very, unless you're on a track similar to the Dutch or so, where the overtaking is as difficult as it was. Right. But I'm tempted here, Rob. I'm very tempted. I think I will
Yeah, I am very high on Albon for this week. I think he has driven really well recently, and I put out a thread on Twitter earlier in the week on kind of the different budget options available.
Yes.
Schumacher was looking quite good, but has regressed a little bit. Magnussen, again, has looked a bit shaky, had a great start to the year, hasn't really delivered much in terms of fantasy recently. And Albon's just kind of been floating around like Stroll, just putting in 8 to 12 points a week. Nothing spectacular, but he's not DNFing. He's not losing too many positions on track. So, you know, if your budget option DNS, you might come away with a -2 or -4. And if Albon's putting in 12, 13 points, that's a 15-point swing right there, which can really make or break a race week sometimes. So I think he's top of my shopping list for this week as far as budget options are concerned. So I'll be thinking about bringing him in if he looks okay in practice.
And of course, what about Super Driver Ocon, Alonso, these kind of guys?
Yeah. I think this week the picks for me are Leclerc. I think he's still the best one because he's got really no competition other than Max up the front. I think Alonso and Norris are both great alternatives. I would peg them slightly ahead of Sainz and Perez at the minute anyway. I don't think their ceiling is quite as high ordinarily, but given they've got three of the big guns starting behind them, they should. Norris has got his race streak, so I would arguably favour him slightly over Alonso. But I think Alonso, Ocon, the Alpine's just got great straight line speed. So if you want to go against the grain a little bit, I think they're a great captaincy differential shout.
Yeah, I love it. I know you're on the road there, Michael, but any plans with your transfer plans this weekend? I know you had to try and catch Antonio. I don't know if you're hearing us. Michael? All right. I don't know if you're still. All right, no problem. But no, I know, Rob, you don't do these 3 teams like us, right? You just do one team.
I did think about getting another team halfway through, like over the break, but I will next year, I think. I'll have one team that will chase budget this season. I've just got one, so I can focus on the one team. But I think it's great to have at least 2 because you can always test out. As you've said to me before, you can always use team 2 or 3 as your watch list team if you want to test out a couple of different drivers that you didn't want to have in your first team. And someone like Vettel, I've just been looking at, his stats are quite good, consistent. If you think, Gasly, for example, he's got a great record at Monza, in the last couple of years. So another person you might want to take a punt on, but just for me, it's the one. So I don't really have as much flexibility with experimentation as you would have.
Yeah, because it's the same thing I do with FPL. Technically I have 4 teams. One is a draft, but I have 3 teams, and I use my A team is the main one, obviously. The B is the team that I put my heart into the most because I like differential footballers, and C is my scout team, and that's what I normally play. But with this now, the F1, because it's so limited, it's only 20 drivers. It's fun to just spread it out and have. And as I said, like last week, as I mentioned, I brought in Vettel. I had Vettel a few weeks ago on my team 3. I had him I caught him in some of his great spurts. I missed him for the last one. I dumped him out last week, but for this race over here. But yeah, I like having these 3 teams here, and then 2 you could put 1 in the varying leagues because they're always different leagues that pop up.
You're right.
Yeah.
I think it's great you can have double or triple entry in some of the leagues because it just means as you say you might want to see if the Alpine constructor can balance out a couple of heavy hitters like you have in your team one and see if that goes all right up against a template team that you would otherwise have running most of the time. So I'll be certainly doing at least 2 next year, put it that way.
Yeah, man, and we'll definitely have you in our league. I think you're in our main league, and you should be. I think you're in our main league. But we have a special YouTube league like just for us, the panel. We'll definitely have you on for sure.
For sure.
Michael, what's your transfer plans before he bunks out?
Where's my transfer plans? This week I don't think I want to transfer to anybody because I have a solid team. Last week my team triple nearly close to 200 points, if not 200 points. That team consists of um, Russell Perez, or I think Leclerc, some of those heavy hitters. So they pulled some serious points. I still haven't made the sacrifice and put in Verstappen as yet, but I guess I reach into that point. In maybe one of my teams, I'll do that just for a weekend and use my mega drive on him so I could get all the points to beat Antonio, because that's the only reason I'll do it. It's for the victory. No reason else. But I have Lewis on a couple of teams. On one of my teams, my team won, and that's going good. So I'm pretty satisfied with my team. I actually had Albon, and I actually started putting Albon in the team because, yeah, he's not always fighting for points, but he's consistent. So I think Albon is a nice bet these days. I've dropped off for the Bottas hype train. I've dropped off for the Schumacher hype train. I have dropped off of the Gasly hype train. Because those guys, I don't know, they started well. I can agree with you all there, but I think they just really, really dropped off. We're not sure if exactly if it's car development or if it's just them, getting tired through the long season. I think Schumacher's issue might be his uncertainty because remember one of the guys on the grid that does not know about their future, or at least their future next year is in jeopardy, is Schumacher. So I guess there's a lot of pressure on him, being the son of the great Michael Schumacher, and Ferrari dropping you. That's kind of painful. So I guess there's all those kinds of things going on the guy's head. But I honestly think that the rest of the season is going to be good. And transfer-wise, that's all my team.
All right, so you're ruling your transfers, as we like to say. All right, no problem. No problem at all. All right, so we could wind down there. Rob, any parting words at all? Anything at all? Any cheeky points? Anything at all you want to share before we go? I mean, anything at all based on history? With Monza. Monza is normally, we saw as you rightfully said, there's always some weird finishers. You think it'll be so. Oh, and before I even do that, is it over? Is that it?
Come back.
I've been saying it 4 weeks now, Rob. Is that it?
Come back to me next week, but I'm about 90% convinced it's Max's title. So, I think he hasn't won. He hasn't won it at Monza, and it seems to turn in a new winner every other year at the moment. So if he doesn't win it, my money is going to be on. I don't know. Let's say maybe Norris's first win. A cheeky punt on Norris.
Ooh, I like it.
If it's not Max, I'll say Lando.
I wish you had I wish you had two teams. But next season, what we'll do, we'll make some packs. Right, so because I think we should make an Alonso turbo drive pack this weekend, but I won't force you. Only have one team, right? But I think Alonso I'll put Alonso, a cheeky Alonso up there. If not, podium for Alonso. Let's start that propaganda early. Podium.
As you mentioned Alonso, I feel like we blew over his whole drama and how much headache that caused for Alpine. And how McLaren, Tifway, Piastri, and how Ricardo is out of a seat come next year so far. Yeah. All it does, Drive to Survive this year is going to be madness.
There's a lot of drama. A lot
of drama.
Any parting towards there, Michael, before you bounce? Any cheeky with your cheeky podium? If Max doesn't make it, your cheeky podium, you can't say Lewis.
Cheeky. Okay, I will say if it is we going crazy, like something real crazy happen, I feel like Ocon could reach on our podium maybe, or Alonso. But if it is we being realistic, it would be nice for Leclerc to get a podium, if not the victory, just to restore his confidence, and then to give Ferrari the boost that they need, because we want to fight down to the end. So if it is, I think Ferrari could get a win here in Monza. it will give them a little boost in confidence and Leclerc and Sainz as well to at least want to fight for the rest of the season. Yes, they may not win the championship, but at least get them a fight. Don't take it lying down as it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. I fully agree with you. Well, guys, we were supposed to do FPL tonight, but because of an out of respect of EPL and whatnot, we won't do that. But we do a UCL show tonight. We also do UCL fantasy. We are your home for fantasy sports, CPL, IPL, UCL, everything, F1, whatever it is. If lacrosse come into fantasy, we'll be doing that as well, right? Anything that has a fantasy. We of course missed the boat with the NFL. This is our learning season. NFL kicks off tonight. I think I actually in the next 9 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, Robert. If you follow NFL, I think it's
That's
just
right.
now. Yeah.
Yep,
But
that's
we're
right.
going. This is our study period. I'm going to be watching the games. I'm going to put it on just now and watch it. I never ever watched a game of NFL in my entire existence on this earth. But I want to get into the fantasy, so we are going to just be scouting and learning this season, and then next season come out hard with the fantasy. We already have at least 6 people that are interested in being our panel. So we can't wait to come out with that. So if you're into the UCL, look out for us tonight at the top of the hour. Right? I want to thank Rob for coming through, thank Michael for coming through. Don't forget this Sunday we are doing a live watch along. And then we have a nice 2 week break before Singapore and then Japan. And we have fun news for Japan. We have a fun plan for our Japan watch along. Singapore is way too early. So I might just do the Singapore watch along home here, but Japan, you have a nice plan coming up. Right?
Japan is gonna be fun.
Japan's gonna be fun. We'll tease it. We'll tease because after start making that flyer, we'll tease it a little bit, but we will definitely be out and about for the Japan, right? Don't mind that it's at 1 a.m. We will be there. So again, I want to thank my panel for coming through and happy picking, guys. May your turbo driver bring you a lot of returns, get a lot of overtaking points, and let's see if Alonso and Latifi and Ocon and these guys can finish in the top 10, and if Alonso will get a podium. I grew up watching and loving Alonso. I know he's a bit controversial, but it'll be nice just to see one of my favorite drivers come up and get a podium. All right, let's see how it turns out. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night and see you all at the top of the hour. Take care.